Hey folks, this is Dave Cricks, broadcasting to you from Leigh-on-Sea in the southeast of England. I'm a bit of a creative type, a music coach, mainly for acoustic guitarists and singer-songwriters at Rhythm Shack. I released my first album in 2020. I also paint a bit and like getting outdoors. So you're listening to the Satisfy My Soul interview series from Soul Shack, where we hunker down, dig in and talk about what lights our candles, floats our boats, and generally makes life worthwhile. So grab yourself a cuppa and let's see if today's discussion can help satisfy your soul.
May your head be calm and gentle. May you find some peace of mind. May your big old
Okay, my guest today is John Carr. John is a retired science and chemistry teacher who also tutored deaf students in further and higher education around Essex. John, I've got a little note here that you sent me. To connect with the outside world is to connect with what his life is really about. So clearly we're talking about the great outdoors. Tell me, first of all, though, how are you? How are you doing today?
Fine, thank you. Yes, I've been outside once today, so...
Have you? In rehearsal, as it were?
Yeah, a nice walk, yes, a good walk in the countryside.
So how do you spend
Only 2 miles, but...
Is that how you mostly spend your time, enjoying the great outdoors, walking?
Well, when I can, yes, that's right, yes, Dave. It's very difficult these days, isn't it? You know, you're not allowed far from home. You're allowed out for 1 hour. The footpaths are about 2 foot deep in mud, but you can usually find somewhere that's good to walk. Yeah.
The woods where I walk the dog at the moment is exactly like that. It's ridiculous. Even with wellies on, you get muddy knees. It's ridiculous. But so the great outdoors, walking clearly. Locally or on holiday, what is it about it that satisfies? What is it you do, and what is it that satisfies your soul? Should we say?
Well, locally, I mean, in normal times when there's no lockdown, seawalls, particularly places like that, waterside anywhere, I suppose, beside rivers, hills, mountains, beaches, whatever you like. You know, away on holiday, we prefer somewhere that's a bit hilly because it's different from Essex. Essex is rather flat, isn't it? Scotland, for example, last 2 years we've had a good holiday in Scotland for a fortnight each time. Plenty of walking, some quite challenging. As a tip there, if a Scotsman ever says to you, "Oh, it's just a wee stroll in the woods, laddie," take your ice axe, your full waterproof tent, 3 days worth of supplies.
And as a kid, I seem to remember you always have to have a block of Kendal mint cake.
Oh, I've got a block of Kendal mint cake, horrible stuff. But it's emergency stuff. Yes, Dave, yes. I mean, walking anywhere, really. I mean, locally, we live in Ashington. We're lucky in that we're 5 minutes round the corner from woodland, muddy as it may be, but there are lots of little minor roads and places to walk around where you can sort of go for a couple of hours, stroll around and hardly see a soul, which is quite nice, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up in Rochford. I don't know if I told you that, but I grew up in Rochford.
Yes, you did, yeah.
I know Ashington a bit, but not quite as far up as you are. How big is the woods there then? I don't think I know that area.
No, it's not that big. Trinity Woods is the one that we go around quite often. That's just off Greensward Lane. Interesting fact about that, I discovered yesterday, during the Second World War, there was a bunker underneath from Churchill's secret army, the ones who were supposed to be sort of guerrilla tactics if the Germans invaded. And apparently the headmaster of the local school was the man in charge. They had guns, food and all sorts of things down underneath there, but no idea where it is now, presumably filled in.
Oh, it's still there, but it's hidden, is it?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
But, there's Magnolia Park as well, which is a wildlife park, sort of. Very pleasant place. It's not huge, but you can get away from people there quite easily. Awful lot of dogs around there as well. Yeah,
getting away from people is in some ways is part of it, isn't it? I mean, as you know, I'm a very keen dog walker, I'm a big fan of the outdoors, and some of the outside spaces are more full during a pandemic than they would be normally. But I guess it's interesting because other people who perhaps don't normally take to the outdoors are perhaps getting out there a bit more. And I know I've seen news reports and such like of people who are saying they've been on walks. I think this was mainly after the first lockdown, actually. people who are saying they've been on lots of walks and discovering their local area, people who'd lived in an area for, years, perhaps all their life, and suddenly realising that there are local walks, they weren't even familiar with, and they're really enjoying it, and it's brought something new to their life. So obviously, there you are. It satisfies their soul, and they might not have discovered it if it wasn't for lockdown.
One local work Judith and I were doing, it was after the first lockdown. We were walking around a local road called The Chase, and there was a very uncomfortable looking gentleman in his shorts there, wandering along, and he looked very nervous. And I thought he looked lost. I sort of stopped a distance from him and said, "Are you okay?" He said, "Oh no, it's okay." He said, "I've been shielding now all this time. It's my first day out. Where does this path go to?" So we were able to tell him, "Well, go up there, turn left, across the stile, etc." And off he went, quite happy, And we've seen a lot of people who seem to be uncomfortable outside at the moment. Partly, I think, because they see you coming and they sort of step to one side, or they don't quite know where they are, whether they're supposed to be there or not. But it's nice, encouraging to see a lot of people out actually walking who wouldn't have done it before.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And of course that changes with the weather. What about yourself? Are you a fair weather walker, or are you out there in all weathers?
Well, used to be better than that. No, we've got all the walking gear. I mean, they say about there's no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothing. I mean, that's not entirely true,
No,
but
I think that's Billy.
okay.
Was that Billy Connolly that said that? I can't remember.
I don't know.
I think
He'd
it
never
was.
been to the South Pole, obviously, had he? So.
Exactly. Yeah. I was going to say, you're going to have to take that saying with a pinch of salt, don't you? Really? Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. No, I mean, you're sensible. If you want to go walking around the local roads, you have a waterproof and umbrella. It's not too windy. If you go walking on seawalls and the like, you want something a bit more decent boots, perhaps waterproof trousers and all that sort of stuff, and a rucksack to keep it all in. But you just cut your cloth, as they say, according to what you want to do. So yeah, we're okay. We just stick the waterproofs on and off we go. And if you get wet, well, you come home and dry yourself off again, don't you?
Yeah.
Just like the dog. The dog has to go out, and you can't say, "Sorry, mate, it's raining."
No, absolutely. I'm out in all weathers. Obviously, if it's very hot, I have to go early in the morning because of the dog, particularly. Although these days, I find when we get to 30 degrees, I really don't like it either. But I know some people love it, but I'm not keen on it. But yeah, as you say, you've got to have the right clothing, and it's funny. The hours I've spent looking for the perfect dog walking jacket, which is both breathable and waterproof, and I like the look of it, and it's also got tons of pockets for leads and balls.
I was going to say, lots of pockets, Dave. That's right. Yeah.
Lots of pockets. Yeah.
You know, where do I put that? And you spend half an hour trying to find the right pocket.
It's a life mission.
I've been through there. Yeah.
It's partly because I'm trying to avoid having to walk around with a rucksack, because it does feel a little bit over the top when I'm only 5 minutes away from home. And just walking the dog to have to take a rucksack.
When I started walking, many years ago, sometimes I have an odd day off in Judith's work. I'll go off on my own somewhere over in the Dengie Marshes over by Burnham on Crouch. I thought, well, I've got to have something with me. So it took me a long time to get used to wearing a rucksack. I felt very, very self-conscious, but it became part of the equipment after that. You just stuff everything you want in it, stick it on your back. It leaves your hands free, so if you fall over, you can catch yourself. You can pick your binoculars up and look around and see what's going on, or whip the camera out and take a photo. So I think, find a rucksack that suits you, stick it on your back, and just ignore what everybody else thinks.
See, it's interesting, isn't it? Because, to those who aren't familiar with the pleasures, if you like, of walking, you tend to assume it's just a simple question of perambulation. You're just walking. That's that. And I think for a lot of people that might be, or for some people perhaps that in itself is not enough. For me it probably is, for you it probably is. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because the more time you spend out there, you do find that you start getting the appropriate clothing, and if necessary, a bag or a rucksack or whatever, and a hat, and everything else. And you mentioned a camera there. Now, I love taking photographs. Most of my walks are down the beach or at Belfairs. The beach being much better for photographs, and I like photographing the dog as well. This one doesn't like it. Chili didn't mind, but this one, it has a built-in kind of resentment of it. I think he just, as soon as you get the camera out, he's gone. It's quite uncanny. Yeah. But a camera for me is a big. A camera for me is a big part of the enjoyment out there. So how do we put it into words? What enjoyment do you get from being out there? Both whether it's photography or anything else. Can you put it into words how that works for you?
It's difficult to put into words, isn't it? I mean, I could sort of go on for ages about it, but we're lucky at the moment. This week and next week on BBC Two, 8 o'clock in the evening, they've got Winter Watch, the programme with Chris Packham and various others, Lolo Williams and people. I think, rather than trying to explain it, it's a good thing to sit and watch that. You've got Chris Packham, who lives in the New Forest. He's not allowed to go very far, but he's got his stepdaughter lives with him. She's also a naturalist. And, talking about, he's very, very enthusiastic, and he shows things that's great. I'd love to see that, well, that's really interesting. Then you go to Wales and you see somebody standing by a waterfall. You think, now, how the hell do I get there? But you can do it, in certain times. And you see all sorts of things that you might not have seen before. And I think the important thing about outside is that you learn to see what's going on, to watch. I mean, sit and watch, if you like. If you sit and watch a tree or something, if you're minding your own business, just sitting there, you'll see birds come and go. You might say, well, what is that bird? And I think, you can learn to identify the birds one at a time. Walk through a woodland in spring, and you'll hear birds all up there. You won't see many of them, but learn a couple of songs. You think, oh, I recognise that one now. That's a robin, that's a blackbird, that's a thrush. You can rule those out. Now, what's that? I've not heard that one before. What's that? And find out what they are. Identify the plants around you, the trees, all those sorts of things. I think it adds immensely to the enjoyment if you understand your environment and you can see what there is around you,
Yeah, I guess so, yeah. I mean, and so for you, it's not just... is it called twitching when you're a bird watcher?
No, well, twitching, I think, is where you drive 5,000 miles to see a rare sparrow, isn't it?
Oh, is it?
Like that,
It's a more extreme version. Same thing, but different, yeah. Yeah, but you're quite right, I suppose. Yeah, if you get to know the birds, get to know the plants, get to know the wildlife, if you can, what you see, and I mean, I get as a kid, we spent some time in East Africa. As you know, my dad was a teacher, and we spent some time over there, and so we were looking at all sorts of big game and all sorts of weird stuff like that. And for me, that was quite an incredible kind of experience. And it seemed a bit more tame when you come back here, but I think you're right. You're absolutely right. Wherever you are, getting to know what you're looking at can enhance it. I mean, I guess it's different for different people, but it makes you more. I suppose, really, for me, it helps you to connect a bit more, doesn't it?
It does, yes. I think it's important. I mean, we're stuck indoors a lot at the moment. I think we could become so self-centred. You can put the TV on, watch programmes, etc. But unless you actually get outside, I don't think you can really release all the tension within yourself. I mean, the exercise helps, doesn't it? Anyway, if you run, running. I've never wanted to run, but run. That's when you see people running around the streets, and they say they feel so much better afterwards. If you walk, just get your clothes on, walking clothes, etc. Go for a walk somewhere. Up a hill, get your heart going, etc. It's really nice. Sit somewhere for 10 minutes and look around. By the time you get back in, I think you began to realise that things aren't perhaps as bad as you thought, and the seasons still go on, don't they? I mean, we were out this morning walking around, and it's strange. I mean, the one particular place we went to, I thought, the smell of autumn was all the leaves down there still. Then we turned the corner, and there's somebody's garden with a mass of bulbs coming up. They're all ready to burst into flower. I thought, spring's here soon, And then before you know it, it'll be summer and then winter. That's all fairly predictable, isn't it? These things will happen no matter what we do, and I think it helps to put a sense of perspective into things. I
think you're right. And I think you've actually hit the nail on the head in many ways. It's, when you're indoors, time can become a bit of an abstract thing, whereas when you're outdoors, it gets light, it gets dark, it rains, the seasons come and go, and it's inescapable. I think I probably noticed it most when we had our allotment, because everything had to work around the seasons. We realised, I mean, this may or may not be true, but we decided it is true anyway, that spring is probably called spring because that's when everything comes up. When you own an allotment, it's a bloody nightmare because everything comes up all at once and you've got to try and manage it. And it literally springs up. And we suddenly thought, I wonder if that's where the term spring comes from. I have no idea if that's the case or not. But it did make you wonder. We're very, very much aware of it.
Well, I was looking out the window this morning and in the garden there, and we've got some hanging baskets on the fence and the wall. And particular hanging basket's got like coconut lining on the outside. And I thought, what's happened to that? And it's all been shredded. What's going on there? And there's this blackbird coming down. It's picking off the bits and pieces, presumably making a nest.
Oh right. Yeah.
And we've seen a few other birds doing the same sort of thing. The blue-text blue tits prospecting for nesting places. They're all sort of around in the shrub at the bottom of our garden, sort of ferreting around looking for boxes and things like that. So things are starting to move.
Yeah,
it's getting lighter every day, isn't it? So there we go. But snow next week. Never
mind. Well, apparently, yeah. But I mean, the good news is when we get to this time of the winter, even up to April, you can get snow, can't you? That's not uncommon. But it's not going to last. It's less likely to last as long, isn't it? It's when you get snow at the beginning of the winter. For me, I find that a bit hard because you think, oh God, it could be a long, cold, hard winter. But I think as we start heading towards spring, I mean, I think on where are we now? I think it's this Thursday that we're doing this. I think on Monday it was 6 weeks exactly till spring, till March.
That's right. Yes, that's right. Yeah.
And I've seen little signs of bulbs starting to appear. I guess we don't have the cold winters that we used to have generally, do we? I mean, I might say that, and then it dumps a load of snow for the next month, and I might regret saying that. But...
No, well, I mean, the older generation, I remember a lot of bad winters. I mean, I think it was the winter of 1963, I think, and the snow stayed on the school field right out until I think it was April time, something like that. Yeah. I remember doing a paper round, cycling up the road through ruts of frozen ice and things, trying to sort of get round on my bike and falling off and all sorts. And that was in March, so yeah, let's hope we don't have that again.
It's one of the times of the year, and one of the things about nature I'm less keen on is extreme weather. Extreme heat or ice or snow I'm less keen on, but anything else, but then again, I guess maybe that's because I'm out there a lot,
yeah, that's right.
I don't know.
Sorry, David. Sorry. The squirrel just ran past the window.
I assumed you're indoors, but maybe you're not, are you?
I'm indoors, yeah. There's a blooming squirrel. He's been plaguing me all day because we filled up the bird feeders yesterday. It's a week on Saturday and Sunday is the RSPB Great British Bird Watch, where they ask people to sit for an hour in the day and just record the number of species of birds in their garden. So we filled up all the feeders to make sure they're coming. And this blooming squirrel's down there trying to have a go at one. There's great teeth marks on the plastic one out there. So every time I see him, I leap up and wave my arms about and he clears off. And I turn me back and he comes back again.
You haven't got his nuts, have
nice recipe. No, nice recipe for squirrel pie somewhere.
Yeah.
I didn't say that.
That's a whole different it's a whole different type of outdoors enjoyment that we don't necessarily endorse.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yes, yeah.
But I know what you mean. I sometimes feel the same way about the badgers when they dig up our garden on a regular basis. But
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
So
we're lucky we've got.
Sorry, go after you, John.
No, just say we're lucky we've only got one badger that comes through our garden. It goes in one side and out the other, and doesn't seem to do much in between. Luckily, so. Praying. I catch it on we've got a wildlife camera out there which catches movement, and sometimes you see it's there about 2-3 in the morning running around.
Yeah. We're hoping this year to grow some sweet corn in the garden, but when we had the allotment, the badgers they know when it's ready.
Oh yeah, they do.
They know when it's ready, so you think it's fine. Even in a cage, you think it's fine, and then you go in there one day thinking, we might be picking our sweet corn this week. And bang, it's gone, shredded, literally every last bit. But I'm going to have another go. I'm going to have another go this year.
There's a nice presenter on BBCS. It's called Ray Clark, who lives over in Burnham on Crouch, and he's always on about his allotment, because he says, "Time to get going today. I'm going to be racing fork out today." He said, "I've got to dig over the allotment," and he planted a lot of sweet corn. He says, "The blooming things." He said, "The badgers know exactly when it's ripe. I sit there one night and think, right, I'm going to harvest that tomorrow. Come back in the morning, and it's gone."
Do you do much veg? Do you do much veg, or are you more sort of floral and?
Oh, it's shrubs and flowers and perennials, things like that. No, this year we grow some. I would have liked to have had veg, but when I was teaching, it's one of those things where the time you get it tends to be in blocks, and the rest of the time it's manic. You don't get time to attend to an allotment or a veg garden, So we grew this year in the lockdown. We did grow various things. We had beans, and I grew some peppers, which got enormous, but they were horrible. What else did we have? A couple of aubergines, more tomatoes than you know what to do with.
Yeah.
The bloke over the road did this. A neighbour did exactly the same, and I think he made 50 pounds of chutney. He said, so never get through that.
That's good going. Yeah, we tend to do tomatoes and just a bit of salad crops and. But I want to do sweet corn this year. But somebody gave me a great tip: is if you plant them in a bucket, just a standard sized bucket, you can get about 3 plants in one bucket. And obviously you could have 4 or 5 buckets. So because they need to get together to pollinate each other, I believe. So you tend to grow them in a clump. But of course, if you think about it, they grow, and then as long as you keep them watered, when it comes to badger stealing time, what you can do is you can pick those buckets in and chuck them in the greenhouse or indoors or something, because there's only quite a short period when they're nearly ready, and you just have to put them indoors overnight and bring them out, because the badgers obviously won't normally come during the day. Not if it's in the back garden anyway, which is what we're planning on doing. So we may just, I mean, your own sweet corn there's nothing like it. It's wonderful stuff. So we might do that this year. I don't know.
Well, if you watch Spring Watch, it's got a lot on badgers on there. Is it Lolo Williams in Wales? They're watching a badger's set. It's in black and white, of course, because it's night time. They're all enthusing about this thing, you know. Then as foxes, they enthuse furiously about foxes. Worth a look, actually, because they're also up in Scotland, in I forget which river it is now, coming into Loch Ness, and they're looking at salmon migrating there, seal colonies, etc., etc. So anybody who's interested in such things, it's a great thing to watch. It's on over the next 2 weeks, finishes a week on Friday.
Okay, yeah, that's worth having a look at. I mean, it's funny, isn't it? When you think of the great outdoors and all the things you can do, I mean, obviously we've mentioned a few things, but, you know, boating, fishing, you know, there's so many outdoor, potentially outdoor pursuits. I've just got a little note here. I was going to ask, you know, how could other people get involved in the great outdoors? But I realise it's such a huge question, isn't it? Because obviously the idea of some of these interviews really is to see if anybody else will watch them and go, oh, I didn't know that, I might have a go at that. You know, when we've talked a bit about walking and appropriate clothing, and I suppose I'm kind of thinking in terms of, are there any barriers to entry? Well, of course, the great thing about walking and many of the things that we've talked about really is there's no barrier when it comes to age or not even location, really. I mean, obviously, different areas would appeal to different people. You don't need any experience. There's no cost. You know, anyone can do it. I suppose the question is, what will people get out of it, really, isn't it? And I think the more you're out there, the more you enjoy it. I mean, I just enjoy the wind blowing through my hair. Not that I've got loads of it left at the moment, but, you know, I find a quick thing I was going to mention, I don't know if you can relate to this. I was talking to somebody once about mindfulness, and he was talking about mindful walking. And the idea of just being out there and being particularly mindful. And he said to me, what you want to do is just walk along and then focus on any one of your senses. So I just sort of thought, okay, well, I'll focus on what I can hear then. And much to my amazement, I did it for about 30 seconds at a time. And I could suddenly hear birds that I couldn't hear. I could hear the wind rustling through the trees. I kind of then moved on and became more aware of the sun coming down and where it was, rather than just is the sun out or not. And I found it a really interesting. I suppose in the long term, I suppose I did about 2 minutes in total, and I became aware of my footsteps and this and that and the other. But it was fascinating because I remember it quite vividly. I did this maybe about 4 years ago, and I remember I really, really enjoyed that 2 minutes.
That's right, yeah.
It's fascinating,
just
isn't
don't
it?
do it when you're crossing a main road, Dave, will you?
Yeah, I try to be mindful when I'm crossing a main road, but in a different way, yeah. More alert, perhaps, yeah.
That's right. Yeah, you said about how people start. I mean, it is difficult because normally I'd say, well, that's fine, you know, join the Essex Wildlife Trust, join the RSPB. There are local groups, local RSPB ones in Southend, Essex Wildlife Trust groups. They organise walks, they organise little courses, things like that, you know. Even for the kids, I mean, they do all sorts of interesting things for kids, because at the moment it's all dead, isn't it, you know. I mean, you can join organisations like the Ramblers, but they tend to be a bit more serious, and you'll find their walks, I think, are rather long, you know. They're sort of 8-10 miles very often. I think for a lot of people that's rather sort of stretching it a bit, you know, especially to start with. But
you need a bit of stretching before and after that, don't you? I say to some people, I think my brother, if I'm rightly, I might quote him and I might be completely wrong, but I think they quite like a walk where they go to a pub and back. But a country walk, you know. But they quite like having a pub lunch while they're out, you know, which is quite a nice idea. I think that's quite a popular one.
Yeah, I've got a couple of nice books that circular walks in Essex, which start at the pub. We try and do sort of every one in the book when we could, you know, before lockdown. Did quite a few, mostly over in sort of Middle Essex, really, where we've never been before, around Braintree Way. And they're lovely, you know, but of course at the moment you're stuffed, aren't you? But you can always do it and take a sandwich.
I think that's a good point, actually.
If there's nobody there.
That's a good point. I mean, now more than ever, because of the pandemic, you know, the idea of taking a bag I mean, I love a flask. As I'm getting older, I'm finding I absolutely love a flask of tea. I don't often take one on the dog walk, but every now and then I take one down to the beach. I go paddleboarding sometimes, sometimes really early in the morning. You know, in the summer we'll go down about 5:30 or 6 or something like that when it's nice and quiet, and have a flask of tea afterwards. And it's just part of it. And it's not just about the paddleboarding. It's having that little flask of tea, sitting on the beach when it's peaceful. It's just lovely, you know.
Well, Judith and I had a nice break last year up in Suffolk. In Aldborough, we rented a sort of self-catering flat, and every day we were out walking. One lovely walk we did, which was right up the beach from Aldborough up to a place called Thorpeness, down past the windmill, and then there's a nature reserve there called the North Warren. There's a seat overlooking the reed beds. We thought, well, let's take a flask. So we sat down, and out came the wine glasses, and a couple of nice glasses of white wine. Sat there at midday, watching marsh harriers feeding over the reeds, and this couple of people came past and said, "Oh goodness, can we join you?" But we're sitting there with a glass of wine. They don't normally do that sort of thing, but we thought, well, why not?
Yeah, it's nice though, isn't it? And I suppose when we were kids, we used to go out and take a picnic, and they used to love it. It's quite a nice thing to do. It's a bit more of a commitment, isn't it? You're going to be out longer if you do that.
Well, you can be. I mean, you always take more food than you need, and then you can stay out longer if you like. I mean, that walk turned into a 7.5 mile walk by the time we'd finished, I think, But, it's one of those things, you break it up into 2-3 mile stretches, and before you know it, you're home.
It's funny, I've not really done it much as for walking, but when I used to do a lot of mountain biking, I started buying a lot of the Ordnance Survey maps. I can't remember what the scale is. I'm just looking up on the bookshelf. I don't think they're there.
The walking ones, I think, 21 to 25,000. I think the walking ones.
Yeah, something like that. You can zoom in. Obviously, this was in the days before mobile phones and such like. And I used to pack myself up with water and maps and snack bars and what have you, and go out for the day on my bike. And I'd end up taking them because of the maps. I'd go various places in Essex. And various places in the North Downs, North Downs. It's about an hour or two away, maybe a couple of hours away, I suppose, these days. I don't know. But I found that really enjoyable. And it's funny, I don't really do that so much with walking, but with cycling, I suppose because I was covering a much greater distance. I really got into the map reading and thinking, well, I think I'm going to go and discover that lake, or I'm going to go and find out why this bit appears to be a hill on the map, and see if I can get up it and get down it. And I used to love
you
that.
Get online maps now. I mean, the Ordnance Survey do. I think you can do a trial for a week or two or a month, whatever it is. I started with that as a subscription, and they're all online. You can get them on your phone, the app, or onto an iPad, whatever you use. I now put a subscription for the year. I don't think it's much. I think it's about £25 for the year, and you can anywhere in the British Isles you can see the map, and you can zoom into 1 to 25,000, which shows your locality. And in fact, I printed off a couple of the maps around here. We found footpaths that we never knew existed. Yeah. So we tend to sort of follow them around, and I've passed the map over to a few other people locally who say, well, we don't know about those. Where are they? So they are. There's a map. Go and find it yourself and see where you are,
Yeah.
They take a bit of getting used to, I must admit, reading it, because you think, well, where am I on this map now? But you can get used to it and learn fairly quickly. If you're close to home, you can't do a lot of harm to yourself, really, by getting lost, can you?
Well, I mean, I did all this before we had mobile phones, and so it was a bit different. But you're quite right. Nowadays, of course, you can, if you've got a rucksack, you can take an iPad with you or something. But your phone maybe a bit small. But I guess it's all there, isn't it? And also, there's an app, isn't there, for all these sorts of things, which tell you exactly where you are. And I imagine it'll do that on a map as well.
I mean, Google Maps will tell you where you are. I mean, the Ordnance Survey one tells you where you are. You can zoom into it, and a little pointer goes, "You're here." I'm out of the way there. I better go back that way and turn around and go around the other path there. See exactly where you are. It's got a compass on, so it'll point north, and you see which way you should be pointing.
Yeah, that's fascinating, isn't it? The things I hadn't really thought about that, but I suppose you can incorporate technology, and you can go on all sorts of little. Localized adventures, can't you, really, and do all sorts of things these days. I mean, geocaching is another one. Have you heard of that?
Yes, I have, not my scene.
No, but it's quite an interesting idea, isn't it, how they're using the technology to, be able to adapt to I don't know much about it. I think it's a sport, isn't it? Really. So
That's right. I think it involves a lot of moving about, possibly running around. But that's right. You have directions to find something. You're in a little box or something in a hedgerow where you find a little item and you see what it is, stick it back in, leave it for the next person, and off you go to the next one.
Kind of like a modernised version of cross country, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah.
Or whatever they used to call it. But yeah. Right. Any other tips that we can think of that might be useful for people? Without going into all the different sports and this and that and the others.
Look it up online. Find out people who walk, people who go locally in places. Facebook's pretty good. I mean, our local one here, you often get a request for somebody who says, "Oh, anybody know any good walks we can do locally with my little boy or my little girl, whatever it is, that aren't too difficult? Anybody know where that footpath goes to?" We used to go down to Wallasey Island quite a bit, but it's a bit of a muddy place at the moment, but a request to say, what's Wallasey like at the moment? Is it safe to drive down to there? And can you walk? And all sorts of things like that. Put a request on and ask. You get all sorts of stupid comments as usual from people, but most people are pretty helpful about what you can do. How you can make a start, where you can go locally.
That's a really good.
Southend's got so many footpaths, hasn't it, round your way?
Yeah, loads. Yeah, as I say, I used to take the bike. I started going off to Wakering sort of way quite a lot. When I'd go out years ago, I'd go out for the day, really, as I say, and you can get a long way, It's a really good point, though. Facebook, and I haven't looked at any, but I'd imagine there must be local walking groups or other outdoor kind of pursuit groups as well on Facebook, mustn't there?
Yeah, I haven't looked to see. I mean, I don't really need to at the moment. I can't, because obviously we can't go very far. But it's worth having a look and see. But I think the ones that you often get are on. I mean, there's the RSPB, Royal Society of Protection of Birds one, which is a Southend one. And there's the general RSPB one. Some that have put on their photographs they've taken out there, which is a bit intimidating because some of them are absolutely amazing photos. There's the Essex Wildlife Trust one, those sort of things. Yeah, the photos, Dave. You ought to have a look. Yeah.
As I say, I need to do more of that really, but I need to find some new walks. I think because I've probably photographed the death out of most of the walks that I do. I imagine, and as I say, the dog doesn't want to play anymore, or this one doesn't. So, well, that's very good. Really interesting, John. I think we'll wrap that up. So I just want to say to anyone who's been listening, and thanks for listening, and hope this inspires you to perhaps get out there, get the appropriate clothing, get outdoors, go for a wander, maybe grow some veg, etc., and all the other things we've discussed. And thanks very much, John, for doing this interview. I think this is actually going to end up going out as the first interview we've done. So fantastic, and thanks very much for that.
See how it goes. Okay, I don't mind rambling on a bit,
I like that pun, John, and I expect to see that come up in a song soon. He's a rambling man.
There was one. Tom Paxton did that, wasn't it? A rambling man, rambling boy. Remember?
Was it? I thought it was Rolling Stones. Or was that Gambling Man?
I have no idea. You're losing me now, Dave. Losing me now. No, I think it was Tom Paxton from the 60s. It was a Rambling Boy.
Rambling Boy. Oh, okay. Yeah, it's Rambling Man as well as another one.
Oh, probably, yeah.
But and indeed, we're rambling ourselves now, so, but not in the walking kind of way.
Yeah, you've just lost all the audience that ever were there.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, John. Cheers. All the best. Take care.
I'm going to go and chase a squirrel now. So.